Welcome to the Curiosity Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Brown. I explore my curiosity of really weird things, existential things, pop culture stuff, spiritual phenomena, animals, and all the other things with subject matter experts. What isn't there to be curious about? In today's episode, I explore my curiosity with ghosts. You heard that right. So why would I be curious about ghosts? I mean, why not? They're ghosts. A spiritual phenomena that I honestly equate with demons. I mean, I'm Christian and Black. And people on social media have their own beliefs about ghosts as well. Here's what they're saying in the comments. For this episode, I chatted with Anastasia Washington, a real-life ghostbuster. That's my name for her, not her name for herself. She's a paranormal investigator, and she's had paranormal experiences herself. We talk about how she gained a certificate in paranormal activity at 16, how to do ghost investigations, if you're thinking of investigating ghosts, right? Why she thinks more Black people should become investigators, and more. This is one you do not want to miss. So let's get into my curiosity. What's up with ghosts? Featuring Anastasia Washington. Psst. No ghosts made appearances during the recording of this episode. Or did they? Hey guys, so we have a very special guest to talk about my curiosity around something that I believe is a thing, but I don't know if it's a thing. And so earlier in my introduction, I talked about basically what this is about. So let me just, shoot the suspense. It's about ghosts. And I have someone on here who can really speak to her own experience with ghosts. And I'm probably going to call you maybe a baby ghostbuster yourself a little
Sure,
bit.
I'll take that.
Baby
I take that.
ghostbuster.
Yeah, I love that.
So I have Anastasia Washington. She is a multi-hyphenate, okay? A creative multi-hyphenate, comedian, actress, writer, singer, all the things. But just in terms of this episode, she is the host of a podcast called Haunts and Hops. It's a show about the paranormal. And as I said before, she's had her own paranormal experience.
Yeah.
Anastasia, do you have anything to add about your background?
I mean, I was one of those, this is probably going to age me so much, but before I got, did the podcast and stuff, I was one of those people that did like a correspondence course to become a paranormal psychologist and a cryptozoologist and got like my certificate and stuff like that. I mean, I was that teenager.
Yeah, we needed to know that, okay? Because now I have other questions about that.
My poor
Oh my
mom.
gosh. Wow. Didn't even know that was a thing. And you and I are the same age. We're both 40,
Yeah.
but I have never heard of this. So when you say you've aged yourself, we're the same age and I've never heard of this. So this is new information to me. I was reading highlights, okay? Those are the books I was reading. Into Goosebumps, into Ramona and what she's doing with Beverly Cleary. This whole wanting a certificate in the paranormal when I was a kid. I don't know anything about this. So we have to
I
definitely
was a
dive.
strange kid. My mom will attest to this, that I was a strange kid. I was one of those people, first of all, I was a working actor at the time since I was
Mhm.
like two, right? So I already knew that like there was education and business and like stuff. I was the kind of kid that was like hustling on the playground. I always had something to sell. I was like selling, cards. I was selling lollipops. I was selling comic books. And I had this crazy idea that I was going to like collect degrees and anything that I was interested in. Which is so funny because I never got one single degree. Certificates up the yang. But I was like that. And so when I got into the paranormal, I did all kinds of research, and there was just no programs like out here in LA that were at the time. I mean, now you can throw a stone and you can probably find a ghost hunter like class or something like that. But back then, I had to find a program online that was like a correspondence course. And they sent me like all this stuff. And I took like, I think I took 3 courses from that. I did the paranormal psychology one, cryptozoology, and aliens, which I am deathly scared of space. So that one was hard for me. So,
Wow. So we
yeah.
really do have an authority on paranormal here on this episode, which is amazing. When it comes to that certificate though that you got, it can I call it a certificate?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Like I mean, now there's like actual I mean, I looked into uh the one of the only programs in the world at the time when I like graduated from high school was in the Netherlands to get an actual degree in it. And I just was like, no, I'll stay home. But that you can actually get a degree in certain places for it. But yeah, I found this program, and it was through the Paranormal Psychologist Association, I feel like. I'm like looking around to see if I have too many books and stuff. Anyway, but yeah, it was through
And
that, and
how old were you?
I think I was about 16, 17. Probably like my, yeah, like probably my senior year. I was one of those people that always wanted to take weird classes, and my mom, like a staunch Catholic until I ruined it for her, um, was always like freak out and then be like, okay, just do it safely and like let me know what's going on. And like the same thing with ghosts because, faith based, there's a whole nother element that you're bringing into believing about spirits and believing about all this stuff. And there's a scientific element. And I think most people that are curious about it, they have an inner conflict about both those things, whatever your faith is, whatever your spiritual basis is, and then whatever your scientific beliefs are. Just really go into what you're seeing, right? So yeah, I definitely give my Catholic family a run for their money when I was just very interested in every aspect of spirituality, spirits, paranormal, what this world has to give us. So thank
I
you,
love
Mom.
it. I
Sorry
definitely
and thank
want
you.
I definitely want to touch on the faith aspect during our conversation. But
Yeah.
before we do so, I'm just still stuck on the certificate. Okay. So what did it certify you to do? What
Nothing. I mean, like
nothing.
honestly, at the time, the best thing that I could do was probably give you some cred in the small groups because we're talking about like the early 2000s. Like you could probably just say like at least I know what I'm doing. At least I've had some training and background. This was very early in like the investigation like aspect of this kind of like science. I mean, not that the science hasn't been going on for a long time, but like, like really the surge of it in the early 2000s, I feel like. So there was all like a lot of people were coming from all kinds of different backgrounds, and what they were learning was learning like practically with each other in groups. And I think the only thing it really gave me was a knowledge of the basis of scientific investigation in the spiritual realm, and also I learned a lot about the different equipment. Now, the equipment has changed over the years, um, obviously, as technology uh, evolves and stuff like that. I mean, there's apps now. I don't know that I trust an app, but there's apps. If you wanted to, like, do that, I mean, I wouldn't say that that would be the best way to go about it. You probably want, like, more, but there's ways, and so I think that was another thing, just knowing the terminology, knowing the community, and yeah, like at least I could go in there and just be like, I'm a noob, but I know stuff, like
I love
yeah,
that. So
yeah,
when you were 16 in 2000, we were both 16 years old in 2000. I
yeah,
love this.
yes,
High schoolers,
yes.
you are learning about the paranormal. What, if you recall, okay,
Mm.
how did they define ghosts? at that time? And
Mm.
what do you believe ghosts are now?
I mean, in the scientific community, there's a lot of different terminologies for different kinds. I think back then there was like I feel like they were really focusing on types of hauntings more than like spiritual obviously like statements of like what a ghost is. I believe that they were really into like the poltergeist type ghost, meaning like if you've seen the movie Poltergeist, I don't know if you have,
Hmm.
those kind of chaotic energy things, which a lot of people believe are not necessarily ghosts, um, but are energy, which like really goes into like the spiritual uh belief of energy, just like being emitted from people. Like so a lot of times this was a philosophy. I mean, some people may still believe in it and some people may not, but that like schools, high schools, orphanages and stuff like that, like where a lot of teenagers or kids with angst were around had poltergeist activity, and the thought was that it's not necessarily a ghost, but it's their energy being projected in like a chaotic way, um which I kind of always loved because it kind of made sense to me. Like, I've been around a 13-year-old girl, I've been a 13-year-old girl, and yeah, I think things would move. you know like I think chaos would
Yeah.
happen. So that was one of the things that I think was kind of prominent at the time, that it wasn't necessarily that everything was like um a conscious entity, because that's a belief that some things are conscious entities, some things are like imprinted, like something so historic or violent or traumatic happened here that it like imprinted and didn't ever leave, and that would not be a conscious ghost. Like, it wouldn't be a ghost that or a spirit or an entity that you could talk to, right? Because it would just be like kind of like a memory stuck, kind of like your VHS tape is stuck on this like one scene over and over and over and over and over again. Um, so there's that philosophy too. And then there's like the one where you can like really talk to a spirit, like it's like a conscious entity, which I think is a rarer belief. Um, yeah, I think a lot of people believe in trapped energy. Energy, the rules of energy are that they can never, you can never get rid of energy completely. So it's kind of a like kind of makes sense for the other things to be scientifically true. Spiritually, that's a whole other thing.
Hmm. For sure. I
Yeah.
love this because I've never ever thought of ghosts being sort of the same as an energy shift or energy angst or the power of your own energy to like move objects in your home.
Yeah.
Um, I've never thought of it that way. That is so fascinating. So
Yeah.
fascinating.
I
Versus,
love
as you
that.
said, yeah, yeah. Versus,
I
as
love
you
that.
said, a conscious entity, right?
Right. Right.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so you learned about all of those different types of ghosts or
Yeah, I
experiences
guess
that could be linked to
experiences
ghosts,
here.
you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, that could be what people are experiencing when they say they're experiencing like a haunting or they're experiencing
Haunted.
something in the paranormal. Um, there's probably so many more now, but like that was really the basis, I think, of my first like education in it. Um, and I really clung on to the idea of like energy and stuff like that. And this is kind of before I mean, we've like, there's always been a spiritual basis of talking about energy now, but like everyone talks about energy. Everyone talks about like things that you put out in the world, the energy you put out in the world, the things that you get back in energy. But it wasn't really that big of a thing back then. But I did like the aspect, and I think it felt very like tangible. Um, from a scientific point of view versus like spiritual. I feel like it kind of conflicts with some of the spiritual beliefs, but also kind of doesn't.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like I don't
Mhm.
think it like really turns any kind of spirituality on their head,
Mhm.
to believe that like the energy you're putting out there is I don't know. I don't know. Like you go into certain places and you feel energy. Like it could be, you don't have to use the word energy. You can feel the mood. You can feel the vibe. Um, and I think that's why sometimes we switch like our personalities, or we switch to the way we handle things because we walk into a room and we feel that vibe. I know as a biracial woman, I feel the vibe a lot and I code switch. So it's kind of like that, right? It's like okay, reacting to that energy, reacting to that vibe. Um, and I think that it makes it feel very possible that there's enough energy in the world or in this room or in this person that weird stuff could happen. Um, Paranormal stuff could happen because of that kind of energy. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying Carrie, but maybe.
I actually thought of Carrie. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
There are so many different avenues we could go here. But I want to hear about your own paranormal experience.
Mm.
Can you share just one with us?
Yeah, absolutely. I there's a cute one. Like I'll say a cute one. I My dad has passed away. And I was writing a script actually about my family, and my it turned into my one woman show, and I was writing it a lot, and I was having like a lot of doubt about the things I was writing. I was having a lot of like feelings, obviously. Like I would just like turn on his old records and I would listen to them, and I would like just be like, am I doing this right? And I literally got a yank on my ponytail while I was writing it. And that's what my dad used to always do. He would like yank on my ponytail and call me Burrhead. and like, and then I felt like I was on the right track. Like that was such a sweet one, right? Like I had more intense ones as a kid. Definitely like my mom was very good about like believing me, talking to me about it. She said, even if it wasn't the way that you imagined it or whatever, I wanted to make sure that you were having a good experience. I think that's really important when kids come to you with like paranormal things, um, to not completely shut them down because of fear or whatever, just kind of listening to them because you never know what's actually happening. And then I've had really crazy ones like there was this one in Burbank with my co-host of Haunts and Haunts. We went, and he was very into the ladies. Whenever the guys came in the room, he would do absolutely nothing. And they were like monitoring this room and me and her in this room, and he like kept touching us and he kept moving my purse, which I hate. That's one of the things I do at a club. I put my purse right in front of me, and if you move my purse, I'm upset at you because I don't want to dance with you. And this guy kept moving my purse because I was like putting it in front of me, moving my purse, touching us. And then all the guys in the other room would run in and they would be like, oh my God. And I'm like, get out. He doesn't like you. He's not going to do anything when you're in the room. He is all about the ladies. And sure enough, every time they left and we were alone, there would be, he would touch my friend or he would move things. It was so blatant. you know?
Wow. So you guys really had experiences with what you would call conscious entities, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I would say
Okay.
this was a very strange um, like paranormal investigation because it was in a house. This is going to sound like the beginning of a horror movie. It was in a house
Oh,
in
don't-
Burbank that was turned into a shop that was selling only supposedly paranormal active um, goods. So dolls, like the one
Mm.
in our room was like a dentist chair, and there was some other stuff, but it was all stuff that was supposed to be paranormally active, so it was literally a shop full of haunted objects. And what a weird place to be because like there's so much energy there, there's so much belief, also the belief that you're bringing in there, right? You're going in there thinking, wow, there's all of this stuff is active and haunted and stuff like that, which you of course as an investigator want to separate yourself from because you want to be like, I want to have a valid scientific experience, I want to make sure I'm investigating with a clear mind, but you're also like a human with like your own stuff that you're bringing in there, and you're like slightly excited and scared and curious, and you're like, oh, these things are supposed to be haunted, like you're bringing stuff like that in too, and you have to like validly um like acknowledge that. I feel like you have to be like,
Mhm.
yeah, I definitely am bringing my own stuff in.
So
Yeah.
then how do you know if it's your own stuff, or can we call it, and please don't take offense because I know that you've heard
Hmm.
this before, is it your own stuff, meaning some sort of psychological desire for things to happen,
Hmm.
or is this really a paranormal experience? How do you know whether it's one or the other?
Well, I think that's why you always do it in groups so that other people are also having their experiences. And there's a variety of ways that you're documenting at the same time. So your physical experience, your mental experience are one thing, but what the cameras and the equipment are picking up is another thing. And seeing if those things coincide, make sense, is is the part of the investigation that's really becoming actual proof, right? Photos, all that stuff. Because yeah, your experience is not biased. It's automatically biased. That's what I meant. You come in with biases, even if you say that you are like impartial and I don't believe and blah blah blah. That is a bias. Like that is like you're walking into something with a completely different energy, a completely different attitude, and being skeptical is in itself a whole nother realm of bias. Like if I'm open and I'm saying like I don't know, like that's a valid place to start. I have theories, I have feelings. I think that's the most realistic and the most like beneficial spot to go into. Um, but, I think that you always have to, at the end of an investigation, if you're sharing it with the community or you're talking about it, you automatically have to say, I came in there feeling blah, and I went out there feeling blah, and this is what the equipment said. I think those are all things that you have to like acknowledge and tell. I think that's what a good investigator is completing the elements. Yeah, because I have my own beliefs. I have my own wants. Like there are things I want to experience. There are things I definitely don't want to experience, and I bring that in. So I just have to acknowledge that. And hopefully I do a good job at that. And you also have to be empathetic to the fact that you're going into like a lot of different places with a lot of different beliefs, a lot of different things that have happened there. A lot of these places are tragic. A lot of these places are heavy, filled with like trauma. And I don't want to like trap a ghost. Like, that's not a thing. I want to know, like, I think it's the same way that people approach like true crime or something like that. You have to approach it with empathy, not with like sensationalism. These are people's lives, these are people's energies, these are people's histories. And you have to recognize that and not be a jerk about it. I mean, you know what I mean? Like I mean, like I'm going to New Orleans next week. That is heavy history. That is tragic history. And you're walking into places that have experienced, I mean, just unimaginable stuff. And you can't walk in there and be like, I hope I see a ghost. I mean, you can feel that. You can be like, I hope I see a ghost. But also you'd be like, the ghost I'm going to see here has gone through, or the person or the energy that has been expelled here is really messed up.
Mm,
Um, and if
mm,
if if there is a conscious spirit here, I hope that I can give them like good energy. I hope I can give them empathy because that is horrific what they went through. Um, I think that's a lot of things that we talk about in Haunts and Hobbs. Really, is like bringing empathy and love into that situation. Should it be real? Because that would suck if I was a ghost that went through all this and then somebody came in there and was like, I hope I get you out of here and I hope I talk to you. Like, I like it would be so rude. I would be pissed off if I was a ghost.
Yeah, if I was a ghost, I would be pissed off because I don't want to be a ghost, okay? I
Right.
am
Yeah.
a
That's
Christian,
valid.
first of all. So I
Yeah.
believe I will have the choice of one or two places, but not this
Right.
earth, right?
Right.
So I'm hoping it's going to be heaven for sure. And that although I love everybody here on this earth,
Yeah.
listen, I have a whole new life. So love y'all, but also it's time for me to move
I'm
on,
out.
okay?
Yeah.
I'm out of here. I'm out of here. Moving on to my bestest eternal
Right.
life. So you talked about, or you kind of mentioned ghosts being expelled, okay?
Mm.
This is the
Yeah.
kind of stuff I love to talk about. What do you mean by that? A
Well,
ghost being expelled?
I think a lot of people, especially like the way that media has portrayed it, is that like these people are going to come in here and solve some kind of uh, problem or mystery that, and it's very romantic. I'm going to come in there, there's going to be a ghost that's in there, and I'm going to like solve the mystery of whatever has been holding them back, and they're going to go on to another spiritual plane, whatever spiritual plane that is, hell, heaven, what, blah, 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 whatever. Um, and so I think there's like a very romantic, like, view of that. That I'm gonna get this ghost out of here. I'm gonna either like it's gonna be in a sweet way, like I'm gonna like let it pass on, or I'm gonna trap it and get this evil demon out of here, kind of thing. I'm not sure that that is very realistic. That is very much like a very spiritual thing, and I think that's like, um, again, that's like your spiritual journey, what is happening, and not really meddle
Mm-hmm.
as an
Mm-hmm.
investigator into
Mm-hmm.
that kind of situation. I think that that gets into like the area of like mediums and spirituality and religious leaders. That's the whole area I think that is trying to figure out their, I don't know, spiritual destiny. Their the where that entity is supposed to go. I think as paranormal investigators, that is not really our business.
Mm.
Other people may feel differently. Yeah.
As you were talking, I was looking up The Conjuring because it made me think about
Mm.
the
Warrens.
real family, the Perrin
Mm-hmm.
family, who, said that they had paranormal experiences, but they did get involved because they were also
Mm-hmm.
spiritual people. So they were having these
Right.
paranormal experiences, having what in this conversation we will call a scientific observation, right? But then they
Mm-hmm.
decided to take it a step further and get involved with these spirits, like see what they
Right.
can do spiritually,
Mm-hmm.
so I love how you are talking about, how in some cases there should be a distinction, right? Like
I think
if
so.
you just
Yeah.
want to, if you want the true scientific part of it, then you're just there to observe,
Right.
as far as these spirits or these energies lives and why they're expelled, as you say.
Mm-hmm.
None of your business, right? None of your
No.
concern, nothing that's in your power whatsoever,
Yeah. If
unless
I'm
you
there.
feel, yeah,
Yeah.
unless you feel like the parent family feels, they felt
Mm-hmm.
convicted to um kind of, yeah, again, get involved spiritually.
Yeah. I think it has to like if I and those are you. I think you have to separate them as an investigator. Like even for me personally, like what I personally believe or the things that I because I'm kind of a sensitive energy person. I've always
Mm,
been. But I have to separate that when I'm investigating, right? That's a whole nother thing. I can observe that. I can notify people that I'm having this, but I have to also step back and go, okay, well, what is like what scientifically have we picked up? What like um and I think that makes you a better investigator, because you're really basing it in the scientific process, the scientific investigation aspect. Me spiritually, me like experiencing things, that is a whole nother thing. And yeah, I mean, we have people like the Warrens who are like the big the you know the couple that went around in all the Conjuring movies, and they worked for the Catholic Church for a long time. They were
Mhm.
based in very much in not investigation, but in solving these problems from a spiritual aspect. That
Mhm.
is, and they were coming from a Catholic position. So that is, I wouldn't call them investigators, and I wouldn't call them observers of the paranormal. I would call them, like what people think of as like, like not necessarily an exorcist, but like an exorcist, like
Mhm. Mhm.
their job was to get spiritual entities out or, solve these
True. Yes.
spiritual problems, which is a thing, but it's not necessarily a paranormal investigation, in
Gotcha.
my
Thank
opinion.
you
In
for
my
that.
opinion.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Can you take us through an investigation? And what would you call it? A ghost investigation, a paranormal investigation? Tell us what you're looking for. Yeah, take us through that.
Yeah, I mean, it depends, right? Usually you're gonna have, I would love to have ideally more than three people. I think that's great. You're gonna have various equipments. You're gonna have EMF readers. You're gonna have, some people have these things called spirit boxes, which if you listen to Haunts and Hops, you'll know that my co-host hates them. But they're kind of like they kind of record, like, she thinks they're very faulty because it's kind of like a weird a ghost echo chamber. Like I'm probably describing, she's probably gonna like be like, ugh, Anastasia, don't talk. But anyway, so a lot of people use those. We don't necessarily, and I think that a lot of it is like you could do a paranormal investigation with an EMF reader, and a voice recorder and a camera, and really the voice recording and the video are like the most important thing because that's when you capture moments. Everything else is like, you know, cherry on top if you have that money. Like, heat readers and like, like all that stuff. But you could basically go and investigate with a bare bones of a photo, like a video recorder and an audio recorder, and I mean that would be pretty scientific. You would have to be waiting there for hours in these weird places. Most likely, it's like a stakeout. You're sitting there for hours. Um, and most of those hours are boring and nothing's happening and weird, and you're in a weird, probably in a weird space. You're probably not in like Disneyland waiting. You're probably in like some weird dank basement, or some weird bedroom. So those are the kind of things that are kind of, um I think they show it in like ghost TV shows, but obviously not to the amount they want to get to the good stuff and put that on camera. But it's a lot of waiting. It's a lot of, what is that? Oh, it was that something? Oh, that was the water heater. Oh, it's like a lot of that. And then once you're watching back the footage, once you're watching back the data, also going, is that blah, 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 notating stuff that you actually heard, and seeing, is there another reason why that could have been, or is it actual proof of something happening? um it's kind of boring, in that aspect, where it's like, it's like an investigation, like, in anything, you're analyzing data, and you're doing it in person, and then you're doing it after, to like really evaluate whether or not what you experience in person, which again comes with bias, is different than the data, or supports it.
So what's some like compelling evidence you've come across during your investigation to be like, yep, that was definitely a conscious entity right there.
I mean, we show a lot of photos that are very interesting. So that isn't like, we always love to talk about photos or video that we've seen, and some of it is very compelling. Some of it is very like, uh, again, like makes me want to believe that this is legit. And then there's experiences that I've had in person, like I maybe it's not 100% like that science would like recognize this as 100% proof, but there's a feeling, and there's like that encourages me to continue to go on, because I felt something, or I experienced something. It's really hard to prove anything because somebody's going to be skeptical. There's really good scientists now, like that are really into like being very much from the scientific perspective, and they are the people that I'm really like thinking those are the people that are going to have like the concrete proof, as much as we can have concrete proof, because I feel like this is such a hard area, um, to really be like this is 100% the way it is, because I think there are so many factors. I think, humans and spirituality and entities are like such a hard subject to completely definitively say that this is exactly the way it
I think that the ponytail tugging is definitely
is.
at least a compelling anecdote. But in the
Yeah.
photos and the video that you're talking about, what would we see?
Well, my mom has one at the LaLaurie house, which is a horrible, horrible, horrible incident that happened. Well, I don't even know if it's an incident. It's a horrible house in New Orleans that experienced extreme trauma. Um, uh, just this mad woman and her husband that just did horrible things to slaves, like made them into creatures and stuff like that. Just really
Mm.
horrible, 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 horrible things. So there's a lot of things that happen in that house. My mom has a picture of like a weird entity in one of the mirrors. Um, People can say, oh, there's like a reflection that is reflecting, and it just looks like that. But you know, that is considered like evidence that can be analyzed, right? A lot of my friends have a lot of different photos like that. Well, the internet has a lot of photos or videos like that. And at this stage, yeah, there is the ability to fake a lot of that stuff, which is why people will be like, that's fake, that's not, that's a whole nother like analysis of it. But like, yeah, usually you see like floating orbs, or you see like a face, or like my friend has one at the Winchester house, and it's like this guy's face like in the window, but it's like the second story, and like it's like way above, and it's like there's no way that there's like somebody like he would have like it's just like not physically possible. So it could be a reflection, that like a reflected weird, but if it's not, then that's pretty compelling, or that's an interesting thing to investigate, because it's just like not physically possible for somebody to stand where they're standing. So stuff like that would show up. A lot of people will have like orbs and stuff like that, like little flashes and stuff like that,
Mm.
and be like, that's a ghost or that's an entity. That's a little bit more common, I feel like. They're like, oh, look at this, this round orb that could have been a dust like on your camera, but it could also not be.
Mhm.
So that those are stuff that people would present as like possibilities or evidence. And again, it's like, it's all like trying to figure out what is real, what's been manipulated, what's not been manipulated, what could have happened to your camera, what could have happened, in the processing of things. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. And I feel like so many people have these photos. If you say you're into like paranormal, they're like, wait, I have a photo. Like,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
like, I feel like that is like the number one thing I hear. I'm like, wait, I have to show you this photo. I'm like,
Mhm.
okay. And then
There
I
are
and then
just
it, and
no,
then
go
you're
ahead.
like, then you're like looking, and you're like, maybe, I don't know.
Right. There are just so many unexplained or just curious experiences that we have as humans, especially when it
Yeah.
comes to the spirit world,
Hmm.
because I mean, we are spirits in bodies. That's what I believe. Okay.
Yeah.
And that our body is just a vehicle. And
Hmm.
once our body has expired, we do move on for sure. Our spirit does move on. But, as you said, when you say, hey, like, I'm really interested in the paranormal, it does open up people to want to talk about these kind of
Yeah.
things because they're looking for answers. They're looking for
Right.
community, to talk about these sort of things. So I just want to say that, but I want to back up to the house that you were talking about in New Orleans,
Oh yeah.
where I guess white people were doing very awful, crazy experimental
The
things on
worst. The
black folks.
worst.
And it made me
The
think
worst.
about this episode of Lovecraft Country. Have you ever seen that
Mm.
show?
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
So, in an episode, I just want to read this on Wikipedia because I literally just found it and was reminded. In an episode called Holy Ghost, Letty, played by Journey Smollett, discovers that her new boarding house is full of dark secrets. The former owner is Hiram Epstein, a white scientist who experimented on black people. Their body parts were found in the home's basements, and now their restless souls are awake again. I remember, that episode, and particularly scenes where the black people that this scientist immorally
Experimenting.
experimented on had were just deformed,
Hmm.
and it was just so traumatic. And obviously these spirits that Letty, played by Journey
Hmm.
Smollett, came into contact with were restless. They were unsettled
Yeah.
because of the trauma that they had experienced in this boarding home.
Yeah.
In your experience, have you come across anything like that? Sort of maybe something um
There
historical,
is.
in terms of black people and any sort of mistreatment?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm a Washington, so when my dad wouldn't even go into Mount Vernon, like he wouldn't even like we went because my family thought it was me, and my dad and my uncle just stayed outside. They would not go in. They had like a feeling, like
Explain,
that.
explain, explain to us the significance of Mount Vernon.
Mount Vernon is George Washington's estate. George Washington, while he is a founding father and while he did great things for America, he was also a slave owner, and kind of a disgusting one. Like his teeth were made out of slaves' teeth. Like he had dentures that were made out of slaves' teeth. Like just horrific things. And my dad definitely had an aversion to it. Again, with the LaLaurie house, which I will pass by this week, every time I pass by there, there's such a weird, it's just heavy, heavy energy. When you even think about how they were caught, well, actually, they were never caught, but how they fled, this poor little slave girl was so scared, so disgusted by what was happening in that house that she ran off the roof. She threw herself off a roof rather wanting to die rather than experience anything that her relatives or friends or anybody in that house was experiencing. Like just disgusting, unimaginable pain. And when I pass by that, I cannot help but feel that. I can't. Like it's just palpable. And yet, this house has exchanged hands many times and now has been modernized. It was Nicolas Cage's house for a while. I can't imagine living there. And maybe it's because of my experience. Maybe it's ancestral trauma. Um, it's in our DNA. They literally have proved that the things that have happened to our ancestors are in our DNA. That's why people that like are scared of dogs, and there's no reason to be scared of dogs. It's because it's ancestrally in our DNA. My ex was like terrified of dogs, and we had to go and get him hypnotized and find out that it was ancestral DNA, like the fear of dogs because of the treatment of Black people. It's just insane. Like, and that's another like thing that I bring to an investigation that is different, right? Like the things that I'm picking up, and the history and the feelings, and New Orleans is such a complicated place. it's so hard for me to party there. I'm gonna tell you, like I like, people are going out there and they're like, I'm partying, and I'm like, wow, this is heavy. It's a heavy place. Even like the history of, like, not even just like the LaLaurie house, like a girl like me they would have thrown a huge party, a ball for me, and I would have been picked out by a man and been like made to live as his mistress for the rest of my life, or until he was done with me. Like that, like, is heavy history, and I cannot help but bring that into an investigation. um it just I it is in me, right? you know
Mm-hmm.
which is
Mm-hmm.
probably why we should have more people of color that are interested in this kind of stuff, to be
Mm-hmm.
honest.
Yeah, I mean, that would be difficult because
Yeah,
I
no,
think,
it is
yeah,
100%.
that would be difficult to do only because, um,
The spiritual
how
aspect.
do I say this? Oh, definitely the spiritual aspect.
Yeah.
I know for me, I don't want to see ghosts. I know that they exist.
Yeah.
I don't need to see them or feel
Hmm.
them or any of that to know that they exist.
Right.
Um so to even put myself in a position to be met by a conscious entity, or
Hmm.
even a big energy shift, right? That was maybe left there hundreds of years ago because of the
Right.
trauma, right? I
Right.
don't want any parts of that. And I think it's because I already have a burden,
Right.
um, and I don't want any more of it. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just thinking collectively as a people, is it possible, for more, and if we're talking about specifically Black people, for Black people
Yeah.
to be interested in paranormal investigation, that would be a very difficult movement, And
Yeah.
unless it has something to do with civil rights. Is there like a connection
Mhm.
between
There
paranormal
probably is.
investigation and civil rights? I mean,
There
we could
probably should
actually
be.
go there. There could be. I could make an argument
Yeah.
just based on what we've
Right.
talked about right now. But what are
And
your thoughts on that?
spiritualism in general, like, the beginning of like seances. I wrote in this book, The Feminine Macabre, because there's not a lot of people of color talking about this kind of stuff. Um, like, about these different, like, spiritualists and investigators, and like women that ran seances, and all that kind of stuff. There is a huge history in the Black community of that. It is all most likely in the spiritual realm, from the point of view of spiritualism and their belief systems. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because I think investigation into certain realms of our history need to be done with care and love and empathy, and from a, a point of spiritualism that is healthy and happy and caring. I think that's the best way to deal with this kind of stuff. If energy is trapped in these places, it's trapped in our DNA. It's trapped in these places. Like, I would rather I investigate it. I'd rather I deal with it than somebody that doesn't understand the history, or doesn't understand how it feels, and doesn't understand, like, that it, or wasn't affected by it, because we're all affected by it. Like, people of color walk around with a lot of
Mhm, mhm,
trauma, the things that we've seen, the things that we feel, the things that we've done, like the things that we've experienced.
mhm,
It is different. And so, like, if a white male is in there investigating this kind of stuff, they're bringing a whole nother, like, realm of privilege, and not understanding that. And so I hope that with that kind of stuff, that there is somebody that, is a person of color that, can lend
mhm,
some empathy to it. It's Yeah, I think it is a hard thing to bring, more people of color in. Like, even, I think true crime and stuff like that. That's another one that's like hard, uh, for people of color to experience, but it's also like how certain people deal with it therapeutically. Like me, I've experienced a lot of trauma in my life. I've experienced a lot of stuff. I like to explore it. I want to know.
Mm.
I need that. That is my trauma response. That's my way of working through it. Other people don't, and that is completely respectful. That is kind of like when people are creating like a horror movie or something, right? Like a lot of people are like, "Oh, I don't want to watch any horror movies where black people are experiencing this level of trauma." But
Mhm.
some black people are writing that because they need to explore
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
So both are valid, and not necessarily exploiting the community, but exploring it in their own way. You have every right not to want to explore it. You have every right to like experience things that way, but you as a creator, as an explorer, as an investigator, as a creative, have every right to be curious and also explore those feelings. And yeah, I don't know, like I think that that's what I'm really hoping happens, is that the people that feel guilty about exploring those kind of topics that are people of color know that it's okay and that it's not exploitative. It is a curiosity, and maybe that is their reaction to trauma.
I love that perspective. Going back to what I was talking about with Black people as a collective and their general hesitance in
Mm-hmm.
entering this sort of space of paranormal investigation, I think is not just the spiritual aspect, but it's the protective aspect. Like, how do I protect
Absolutely.
myself, when I'm
Mm-hmm.
going into these
Absolutely.
situations consciously? Because the energy world is real, the spirit world is real. That's really the most real of the real is the spirit world. So how do we protect ourselves? How do you protect yourself?
I've over the years have had to like really focus on protecting myself, and I wasn't always very good at it. I would just kind of run amok with it and I would just wonder why I was so depleted. I mean, I think it's all about, keeping your mental health and your self-love and your self-help all like in line, because when you're walking in there and you're stronger in who you are and you're stronger in your just your like toolbox of keeping yourself like mentally safe and like spiritually safe, if that is your thing, you'll have a lot to pull from, right? Because you can block some of this stuff out. You can walk away if things are too much. Like you can leave a situation, and that's okay too. um I do think that it makes sense that people wouldn't put themselves out there when they're in constant danger anyway. Like that is why I think it is primarily white. Uh, it's just like skydiving or any of those. Like it's like, why would you want to do that? Why would you want to do that when you are constantly feeling that trauma or that scared or that just walking down the street? You don't need that. That is something that is very much not a thing that people that are on constant state of I think women too, like we're like walk around and we're like, oh, something's gonna happen all the time. We don't need to add danger to that necessarily, and so that makes sense. But I think when you're going into spiritual investigation and stuff like that, I think you know your spiritual beliefs could probably dictate how much you need to put yourself out there. I will say that, without speaking like to any personal spiritual stuff. I would just say like that is probably your best guide and your best defense, depending on what you believe in and what you are feeling and experiencing. If that makes any
Yeah,
sense.
I love that. We are close to the end.
Okay.
I just want to ask, lastly, of all the movies that you've seen,
Mm-hmm.
which movie has gotten it right when it comes to depicting ghosts?
Mm-hmm.
I can
Ooh.
throw a couple out there to get your mind. moving. Ghostbusters, Beetlejuice,
Definitely
Ghost.
not. Oh, yeah. I mean, probably anything that is I mean, I feel like there's like a found footage one that was like done in like a mental institution that's probably more realistic because it was kind of like that's more like realistic to an investigation per se.
Mhm.
Um, Experiences I think vary, you know. Yeah, I think it depends on the experience and it depends on the kind of entity. I mean, poltergeist obviously isn't a very extreme version of a poltergeist situation, but I think there was moments in there that kind of felt, and also it's exploitive to a certain group of people. So I wouldn't necessarily say that that's completely accurate, but I would say there are elements in there that feel grounded, and then there's craziness. So I mean, yeah, I mean, there's also like the paranormal activity ones where there's like those kind of creepy moments and those like little tiny movements and stuff like that. I feel like that is very accurate to what happens in investigations. Then it gets crazy again in it. So, you know, like I don't know, you know. Um I think it'd probably be a very boring horror movie if you really were like really grounded
I
into
love that. It would actually be
investigation.
boring. Yes.
Maybe, yeah.
It would be very, very boring.
Yeah,
I
I don't
love
think anybody would watch.
it. Lastly, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I hope that I hope that everybody supports each other's need for knowledge and need for exploration. That's just like, and that goes across like all these like darker, macabre subjects. I think you have the right to like be curious. Um, and I think the more empathy we have to people in general that need to explore these things, I want you to know that like, you know, it's okay to explore those things and you're still a good person. You're still, you know, you're probably still on your right spiritual path, your right, you know, morality path. Just because you're curious about it doesn't necessarily mean that you're a bad person. It's just a curiosity, it's a trauma response, and so I hope that that people explore it in healthy ways instead of, you know, feeling bad and then doing it like in a really shameful, weird way. Just, you know, acknowledge that you're curious and find people that, you know, can talk to you about it and that are nice, kind people. And hopefully, you know, that'll be the best way to go after your curiosity.
I love it. Well put. Tell us, lastly, tell us where we can find you. Of course, we know that you are the host of Haunts and Hops, the
Yes, haunts and
podcast.
haunts. Yes.
Anything
And
else? And your social media.
yeah, on Instagram, I'm at Anastasia Wash. I also have my website, anastasiawashington.com, which should have all of my social media. And also will have my book, my audio book flashing up there, which is like humor for self-help with a sense of humor. Yeah, you can find everything there. I don't use Twitter anymore, but I'm on there, I guess. Yeah, Anastasia Wash is probably the best on Instagram.
Thank you so much to our guests for joining me, and thank you for listening. This episode was edited by Edonis Bakaj, hosted and executive produced by me, Jennifer Brown, produced by Latrice Love, and distributed by Black Owned Productions. I hope you'll join me again on another episode. The Curiosity Podcast is a safe space to not only explore my curiosity of all the things, but yours as well. And together, we get to dig a little deeper as to why that curiosity exists in the first place.